America's favorite sport. Do you like football?
We do. Yep.
Do you have a favorite team?
Bears.
My favorite team is the Chicago Bears. They are the most storied franchise in history since they began in 1920. For 9 decades, they've been the heart and soul of Chicago. Their history goes back to the start of the NFL, when George Papa Bear Halas was not only a pioneer of the game, but one of the founding fathers. They are one of the 14 original teams for the American Professional Football Association, which later became the National Football League, or also known as the NFL. To people living in Chicago, they are called the Monsters of the Midway, for good reason. They've won 9 championships, they've had 25 playoff appearances, and also 50 winning seasons. They also have the most players in the Hall of Fame, with 27. Papa Bear, George Halas, was not only a coach, a player, but also an owner in the 1920s simultaneously. He was born in 1985 and grew up in Chicago, attended the University of Illinois as a civil engineer, and was an ensign in the Navy for World War I. He retired from coaching in 1967, and he died in October 31st of 1989 with pancreatic cancer. He played such an integral part in the development of the NFL that the NFC trophy was named after him. The Bears have many notable players in history, so we'll just touch on a few. From 1925 to 1934, there was running back number 75, Red Grange, or the Galloping Ghost. He was considered the superstar of the NFL. He was the first player to be drafted from college. He was the first player that was used for endorsements. And the NFL was really struggling at this point. They needed new revenue, they needed to bring fans into the game, and so they capitalized on Red Grange to get people to come to the games. From 1965 to 1973, we have number 51 linebacker Dick Butkus. He was considered one of the most feared and ferocious linebackers ever. And in fact, NFL.com named him the most feared tackler in NFL history. From 1965 to 1971, we have number 40, Gale Sayers, or known as the Kansas Comet. He had many records. He had the most touchdowns in a rookie season, most touchdowns in a game, and tied for the most kickoff returns in a game. He's also had the highest return average. From 1975 to 1987, we had Walter Payton, also known as Sweetness, for our running back. Mike Ditka said he was the best player he had ever saw, but an even better person. He got his nickname Sweetness not for what he did on the field, but what he did off the field. He created a lot of charities. One of the most famous is bringing toys to underprivileged children, and also was an advocate for organ donation. From 2000 to 2012, we have my favorite, Brian Urlacher, for a linebacker. He was one of the most productive linebackers ever, and he holds the franchise's most tackles in a career. He had 1,353 tackles during his career, which 1,037 of those were solo tackles. Besides George Halas, Coach Mike Ditka is the most famous coach of the Bears, and he coached from 1982 to 1992. He was a player for the Bears from 1961 to 1972 and the coach of the famous 1985 Super Bowl team. He is most well known for his sweater vest and his mustache. The 1985 Super Bowl champion Bears were noted as one of the top 5 teams in NFL history. Their defense was so ferocious, they outscored their opponents 456 points to 198. They had 16 wins and 1 loss. They had 5 Hall of Famers: Walter Payton, Michael Singletary, Dan Hampton, Richard Dent, and Mike Ditka. 3 months before the Super Bowl, they recorded the Super Bowl shuffle. They were so sure they were going to win. Dan Hampton refused to participate because he thought they were too sure of themselves that they were going to win. The Super Bowl shuffle was so popular that it made number 41 on the top Billboard 100 hits, and also was nominated for a Grammy for the best rhythm and blues performance. All the proceeds goes to the Chicago Community Trust. Some fun facts about the Bears. They have the oldest rivalry in NFL history, the Bears versus the Packers. In 1921, the Packers cheated and went against regulation and brought college players into the game. Papa Bear blew the whistle on them, and they were kicked out of the NFL. When they were reinstated in 1922 and the Bears and the Packers met for the first time since, there were so many fights on the field between the players, it was the first game that a player was ejected for fighting. From 1990 to 1997, Saturday Night Live brought the skit, The Superfans, and coined the phrase, "Da Bears." And now, State Farm has brought the Superfans back, putting them in commercials with Green Bay quarterback Aaron Rodgers. The Chicago Bears are also one of the only 6 teams that don't have cheerleaders. They did have cheerleaders from 1976 to 1985, and they were called the Chicago Honey Bears. Their last performance was on Super Bowl 20 in 1986. After that, when it was time to renew their contracts, Virginia McCaskey decided they were degrading to women and sexist and refused to re-sign them. The Bears, after all of this, with so many great players and such a great history and beginning, are one of the greatest and most storied franchise in the history of the NFL.